Blinken said something that blew the minds of these anti-China neocons. And I'm talking about in the Uniparty, in the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. If you look at this, there's quite a few quote tweets, 9.4 million views. So this tweet blew up, and this response in this statement by Anthony Blinken blew up because, as I stated before, America is the most propagandized country in the world, and most Americans don't realize that we have a one China policy, and we had a one China policy where we acknowledge that Taiwan is part of China for decades. Do you guys know that NATO acknowledges Taiwan as part of China? Meanwhile, people talk about China and Taiwan as if they are completely different entities, even though that is not United States policy. So when you see the United States propping up Taiwanese separatists, when you see Nancy Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy visiting Taiwan and promoting the separatist movement, that is in direct violation of the one China policy. So China has shown amazing restraint in consideration of these events. So in order to normalize relations with China, in the 70s, they agreed to acknowledge Taiwan as part of China. It's been a bedrock principle that normalized trade as extremely important for the global working class between the United States and China, between the West and China. The normalization, that started with the 70s and the acknowledgement of Taiwan. That is extremely, extremely important. So when the United States, seeing China rise to be the superpower that they are today, start to violate that policy because they know that's the one way they can wage war with China, because at the end of the day, when China defeats the United States, they're going to resort to war. So in order to justify war, they're going to fuck with China and Taiwan so they can go to war with China. So a bunch of war hawks and Western chauvinists can say China is the aggressor and they started it. And so actually, like, I see through it, obviously. Zoya see through it. We see through it. But it's actually amazing 3D chess, if you think about it, because look at how many morons fall for it. Even Tucker Carlson, fearmonger over China all the fucking time. The right wing, this is the biggest blind spot of the right wing populists. And they think they're anti-empire. They think they're impressive. They're not impressive to me if you're falling for the fearmongering over China. I think RFK fearmongering over China as well, saying that they are developing a bioweapon with no evidence. RFK said that they're going to develop a bioweapon to attack people based on their racial background with zero evidence, implying that China is an aggressive imperial empire, which we know that is not true. But RFK is saying that because he's a Democrat, and as a Democrat, he must fearmonger against China. I don't have any problems with people going on right-wing stations, especially if you drop fire on right-wing stations. But RFK is a coward because he go on right-wing stations. He ignores Sabby Sabs, who reached out multiple times. He go on right-wing stations to fearmonger about China. But you guys think he's brave. Can't call it the Israeli lobby. You think he's brave. So anyway, let's get to this video that exposes the one China nonsense. Let's continue.
On Taiwan, I reiterated the long-standing U.S. one China policy. That policy has not changed. It's guided by the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 joint communiques, the 6 assurances. We do not support Taiwan independence. We remain opposed to any unilateral changes to the status quo by either side. We continue to expect the peaceful resolution of cross-strait differences. On Taiwan.
So I know you guys are asking yourself, oh my God, I can't believe Anthony Blinken is saying this. And right now people are melting down over this. I have to point this out. The United States talk out of both sides of their mouth all the time. The reason why Anthony Blinken had to say this is because Joe Biden fucked up bad a few months ago when he had an interview and he said, will you respond militarily in China, quote unquote, invade Taiwan? He said yes. And then when that happened, the State Department and the Biden team freaked out because you're not supposed to say that publicly. You're supposed to escalate with Taiwan. This is what they call the China. They have a unique strategy where they engage and escalate against Taiwan, but their public position is acknowledging Taiwan as part of China. So as Anthony Blinken is saying that, the United States is arming Taiwan with these separatists. You have Nancy Pelosi escalating with Taiwan. So then when China like, hey, what the fuck you doing in Taiwan? The United States then gaslights the world and say, hey, man, remember the statement we said? When we said we acknowledge China as Taiwan as part of China? So they provoke China. They provoke China on Taiwan while lying publicly based on their statements so they can plant China as the aggressor. You guys understand that? So there are a lot more Americans who don't know about the one China policy, as shown here. Look, it's at breaking. This fucking guy, I guess. Breaking. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken gives China the green light to invade Taiwan during his visit to Beijing, China. What? If Marjorie Taylor Greene in the right did January 6th times 3 in Texas, and the United States sent in the National Guard to squash it, will you say the United States invaded Texas? Like, you guys realize how fucking stupid you sound? You guys understand that Taiwan is 3 times closer to China than Hawaii is to the United States? And there is a very prominent movement in Hawaii that want Hawaii independence, the Hawaii independence movement. So if they started an armed rebellion against the United States to get Hawaii independence, and we send in military troops to Hawaii to crush that, would that be the United States invading Hawaii? It's an absurd position. But this is the reaction that the right have and neoliberals had when they heard this, because they never heard the one China policy, because the United States is uniquely propagandized. He said, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken gives China the green light to invade Taiwan. We do not support Taiwan independence. What a pivot from Biden's previous comment just months ago. What happened? So once again, you guys see how RBN is the only channel that's going to give you good analysis on this. No, like Breaking Points is not going to explain this to you. Breaking Points is not going to explain this concept to you. So when Biden said that was a giant gaffe. That was a gaffe is when he told the truth. He told the truth about U.S. policy invading and get involved in Taiwan, right? A gaffe is when they tell the truth. So Biden was not supposed to say that because it violate U.S. policy. So people on the right don't understand that. So they heard Biden say that, and now they try and at the time, because they try and paint Biden as being soft on China, they were saying, "Oh, we don't believe you." So now they use this statement and say, "Yeah, we told you guys that Biden is soft on China and Taiwan." They don't even understand the United States strategy when it comes to engaging China and Taiwan. RBN and our allies and friends, I get Danny Haifong shout out because he does a good job breaking this down as well. Only a handful of channels will tell you this. Only a handful of channels will break down how the United States is using a dishonest strategy to paint China as an aggressor in Taiwan, where he's speaking on two sides of the mouth. So this statement right here, right when picked up and they see Anthony Blinken actually committing to U.S. policy, even though they're hypocrites. So any last thoughts on this segment before we wrap up?
Well, we just see the same thing playing out all the time. From Russia to China, they're always fear mongering. And due to the undereducation in this country, which is by design, Americans just gobble this up. They're always more than willing to think that there's always someone out to get us. When these people are building infrastructure, they're building trade routes, they're creating peace, they're actually concerned about their well-being and growing their economies, which are growing, and China will take over one way or another, no matter how much America tries to sabotage its progress. Learn Chinese, guys, because China is the future. So it's the same old tricks, and it's unfortunate we fall for them. And I'm glad we got that clarification straight from Blinken, so no one can say that, it's some Russian propaganda. We have got to get back to advocating for peace. War is horrible for everyone. War is horrible from the proletariat. So unless you're the 1% of the 1%, it's also bad for you. That funding should be going into our communities. Look at the crumbling roads. Look at the undrinkable water. Look at all of the problems we have in this country that could easily be solved. And Ben Norton wrote a great article pointing out that right now America is squeezing all the countries that are indebted to it, and to the tune of roughly $100 billion. The 75 poorest countries are being forced to pay 35% interest rates on their debts. And this is US imposed colonialism. This is how they keep countries impoverished. And at the same time, they easily found $100 billion to send to Ukraine, which is a massive money laundering operation. In all reality, you heard from Serge, may he live to see another day, exposing how BlackRock operates and how all of these things are interconnected, and any sort of chaos, any sort of war, or any sort of attack on things like wheat production is good for them because they will just trade stocks and they know how to profit off of it.